All right, well, let's kick it off, guys. So welcome everyone to the final and certainly not least panel of the day, and it's a gaming panel, which is biasly my favorite. And let's get some introductions here. I'm Eli, a community lead at the Arbitrum Foundation, and yeah, I'll be moderating. So why don't we start with Tobias? Who are you? What project are you with? And what are you guys building on Arbitrum? Or
I'm Tobias, founder and CEO of a company called XPopulous. XPopulous focuses exclusively on making very high production quality Web3 games. We have two active projects right now. One is called Final Form. Final Form is a fully on-chain trading card game. It's due for release in the next 2 or 3 months. We also have a very Fortnite-esque game called Lamo. It's a third-person action MMO that focuses on unlocking skins and all kinds of cool items.
All right, great. And let's move on to Aaron. Same question.
Hi, I'm Aaron. I'm VP of Gaming at Pixel Vault. We are launching a game called Battle Plan on Arbitrum Nova. It's an auto battler featuring our NFT characters, the meta heroes or inhabitants. It's like 3v3 combat, and then we've built also on Arbitrum a protocol called the Reboot Protocol, which allows sort of like a decentralized wager system for any game. So battle plans are kind of our lead title, demonstrating the functionality of that protocol, and then we are going to be building a lot more titles based on that coming forward. We recently acquired Wolf Game, which will be coming to Reboot as well.
Is that the same Wolf Game that won Game of the Year at one of the NFT conferences a couple years back?
Probably. I don't think there's any other Wolf Game.
All right, cool. Sobi, you're up.
Hi, I'm Sobi. I'm a core contributor at XAI. XAI is a layer 3 or modular execution layer for game logic. We're a game publisher as well, and we work really closely with the XPopulous team. We're publishing the first couple XPopulous games, and excited to chat with the lads today.
Any brisket in the oven today?
No brisket in the oven today, dude. No brisket in the oven today. But we got coffee on the table, and we got some good speakers on the panel.
All right, perfect. Adam, last but not least.
So I'm gonna have to see how your brisket measures up against mine. So
probably not as good. Probably not as good.
Hey everyone, I'm Adam. I'm the product lead over at Proof of Play. We're a decentralized technology company building infrastructure for people to build games, and we're also focused on building a game called Pirate Nation, which is our first title, which has been out for almost a year now, which is kind of amazing to say, which has been building in public. And our game is 100% on chain, and we've been building in public every week, launching something new to our community.
Awesome. All right, those are the introductions, folks. You know who they are, what they're building, and let's get into some more deep questions on this topic. So, for those who may not be familiar, I guess could one of you or a few of you give a brief explanation on what it means to put game logic on chain, and I guess how that differs from traditional models?
I can give it a stab. So when you're making a traditional game, there's typically two places that game logic could live. In contemporary games, usually it lives in both of these places, but one is the client. So the game engine itself can hold the game logic. Typically, if you think of a older school game, like an NES game, all of that logic would live in the cartridge. If you would fast forward from like 2000 to 2010 and you're playing a game like Morrowind, for example, all of that logic is basically going to live in the files that you download to your computer. More contemporary games that are multiplayer do still have some logic that lives on the client, but a lot of it is offloaded to a third-party server. And the reason that's done is basically to help keep people from cheating. Because if those files exist on your machine, on your PC, they're easier to access, they're easier to mess with. So a traditional game nowadays, like anything from Call of Duty to Fortnite, is going to have some game logic that lives on your PC and also on a third-party server. And then your PC is going to communicate with that third-party server, and the logic lives in both places. What's really interesting, of course, about on-chain games is there's now a third place that game logic can live, which is the chain itself inside of smart contracts. And there's a variety of benefits and also challenges that come with putting game logic on a chain and smart contracts, which I'm sure we can cover in the subsequent questions.
I guess, like, how does that work when it comes to user mods, like, user-generated UI things in game?
It's a really good question, too. So some of the bigger modern communities, if you've ever played like an Elder Scrolls game, for example, really big modern communities spawned around games like Morrowind, dating back to 2003. And then, of course, Oblivion and Skyrim. And today, if you play GTA 5, that game has been around for a long time. So really, really big modern communities that can change anything from the gameplay to the way the game looks. And in order for that to work, the source code needs to be exposed to the game. So in a traditional game, the companies behind these games are usually very thoughtful about what source code they expose. So it doesn't make things like cheating easy, but still gives their community access to the parts of the games that the community may want to change and have some fun with. Now, of course, the really cool thing about blockchains is that you can expose everything, and in certain ways not have to worry so much about whether or not it's going to be tampered with, because obviously chains, smart contracts are immutable. So this opens up a ton of possibilities for fully on-chain games, for people to be able to contribute to these communities and to be able to build all sorts of mods without the development teams behind them needing to worry about specific kinds of cheating.
Can I jump in real quick? I just kind of want to
Please.
reframe, just thinking about the original question a little bit. Like the way that I think about what having a game and game logic on chain, like it really boils down to like who is authoritative. Like, how do you know what happened? And so a game, like game state, is really squishy. And so it used to be like, you play Duke Nukem with a bunch of friends, you just vote for one of your friends. Like, I'm the one that decides what happened, right? And so we all shoot at each other, and just, one person randomly is like, you shot first, Sobe, like you get the kill. And then in the server, so that's like a original like peer-to-peer decentralized model. The problem with that is anyone can hack the packets, or if you don't trust the person that got voted, they can say like, well, I'm always gonna be the one that shot first because that benefits me. And then it moved to kind of like a centralized, whereas like, okay, I trust Blizzard to decide what happened, and they become the authority for like who shot, and they're impartial other than like what benefits them, so they can decide who picked up the golden crazy axe or whatever. In a decentralized model or like a blockchain based model, you rely on, ideally, I think in the best case, you rely on the chain, like a decentralized authority for blessing the state, like what happened, and we all agree either through some validation protocol or through the blockchain itself. And it's kind of I think of it as the problem of authoritatively deciding who what the game state is, and the blockchain in general is the same problem, right? Because the blockchain originated in like whose money, who actually owns this money, and so it's an extension of what blockchains are for, to sort of like a more complicated state other than an account balance.
So to put that in like sorry, Adam, go ahead.
So I can actually give a very concrete example of the benefits of on-chain that we've seen in our community. So we had a World Boss event back in March or April. And during that event, there were 2 community members who were outperforming the rest of the community. And we had a damage leaderboard, and the top damage leaders won, outsized prizes. And so there were a couple of people in the community who were just being, accused of cheating. And gamers hate cheaters. And we are like, okay, we looked at it ourselves. We were like, yeah, they're not cheating, but it's not enough to just show, like tell, you also have to show. So we built a Dune dashboard. At the time we were on Polygon. So we built a Dune dashboard that allowed anyone to look up with the wallet address all of the moves that person had made on chain and show verifiably, factually, in a way that is tamper-proof, what those people were doing, what the moves were, what the outcomes were, like what the range of outcomes could have been, where they actually landed. And so our community turned from like pitchforks out to those people who they thought were cheating into, oh my God, on-chain games are cool. Like these people aren't cheaters. They just got really lucky with the RNG. And like, I hate them anyway because they're winning and I'm not, but at least they're not cheating. And I don't hate them for that reason. And so that was for me like a crystallizing moment within our community, internally and both externally, for the power of building a game that's on a transparent blockchain.
Yeah, absolutely. And same, like for Reboot, we build it around similar principles where each game session you play a battle plan, someone's getting the ass end of the stick. And so we can generate a full transcript that demonstrates verifiably like a fully repeatable transcript of all the game actions that shows like, well, you lost because you suck at the game, not because we're advantaging someone or advantaging the house in terms of who won.
Yeah, I'm glad you went into examples, Adam. That's where I was going. And I feel like examples are the best way to really showcase, what the point of on-chain gaming is from a user perspective. One example I'm curious if you guys know about is trading card games. We all have played like MTG online or Hearthstone online, and you feel cheated by the RNG sometimes. You like do the math, you're counting cards, and you're like, there's no way that should have happened. Does on-chain gaming also have a way to verify RNG in like deck games or any other similar related things that you guys have experience with?
Yeah, the short answer is there's more than one way to skin that cat. There's a variety of methods that can be used to do on-chain RNG. I know that we're using on-chain RNG, and I don't actually remember what solution we landed on, but for our trading card game Final Forum, there's quite a bit of probability-based rules, and on-chain RNG is used specifically so that players can go and check exactly what happened to verify that they weren't cheated, basically.
I think there's a couple of reasons to like advocate for on-chain games. One is, you hear this a lot in the autonomous world academic speech of like extending the game. If you look at the history of video games, some of the most popular games that people still play to this day that dominate most play hours, games like Counter-Strike, League of Legends, Dota, right? Like all of these games started off as mods. And if you notice the fact that these are the games that have the largest player bases, yet now games don't really have much of a modding community. Bethesda is like one of the few, developers that's still, really pushing for the modding community, albeit it's gotten worse over time. And I've thought about this a lot too, because I first got into crypto selling hats and Team Fortress 2 on, random websites for like BTC. Should have just kept the BTC, but whatever. And I realized that the way that modding works today is pretty awful for like the game developers, because someone will just come in and mod your game and now you have no incentive alignment. They're like, okay, all of the monetization's over here, all this is over here. For Final Form, one thing that we realized is, hey, we're building a really high quality desktop game. It looks amazing, fully on chain. And we were talking about this with the Xbox team, like internally, saying, hey, there's people that, may not have access to a desktop PC. And, what if someone works on a browser version of the game, a mobile version of the game? Like, how do we handle that? And quickly realize like, oh, wow, putting all the game logic on chain actually makes that a lot easier, because the graphical interface you interface with the game is just a front end. Similar to how many people in the audience that are more like DeFi native, everyone has used Uniswap and has used some type of aggregator, right? That aggregates across all these different, AMMs. They have their own front end, things like Matcha, 1inch, etc. You could think of that almost like that composability the same way with video games now, which has never really been possible before, where, someone in the community, can get a grant from the XAI Foundation, or, they can go just do it on their own, self-funded. They can just see, they have all the contracts for the entire game on chain, and they can create their own web desktop version of the game or mobile version of the game, and all the logic is still there. Obviously, this hasn't happened yet, but you can also figure out ways to do things like contract secured revenue, right? Where it's like, okay, your front end is charging a certain fee or delta on everything, and then we're getting something. And that's that incentive alignment that couldn't be possible in Web2 games. And the other thing that I think is interesting as well on why you want to do on-chain games, and especially just decentralized games. We're big believers in decentralization at XAI, and the ex-Populous guys have echoed those beliefs as well. And having this fully decentralized game, what's awesome is you can use these different payment rails that are just crypto powered, right? You can all of a sudden have I play a lot of Parallel. I invested in them. I love them, whatever. But I'm making like $20 a week playing the game. It's nothing crazy. I've also spent way more money than that on the NFTs. But imagine trying to do distributions of $20 to a large player base if you're like a Web2 company. It's impossible, especially across different jurisdictions, all this stuff. Like I don't know what their player base is made of. But let's look at League of Legends, of fully truly international game. If they were trying to do these types of like micro payments or transactions, just the administration costs would make it too cumbersome to even do. So I think having things on chain enable those types of functions too, where you can actually have micro tournaments, right? Whether it's Pirate Nation doing something with like a leaderboard, they don't have to worry about, when we do this distribution, if it's an ETH or ARB or whatever, okay, now I need to go have them sign up for some like payment flow and get their address and send them a check or get their bank info. Oh, their bank is like in Thailand. I don't know what the Forex exchange is. All these complications that make it not even worth it. So I'm really looking forward to, that's another affordance that I think on-chain gaming is going to enable, is this way to reward communities in that flywheel.
Go ahead, Adam.
So on the, another example from our community. So one of our core game loops is something called bounties, where you click, you're pirating, you send them on a bounty for some period of time, and you come back and you claim it. I will be the first to admit the bounty UX and UI is like not that good. It was thrown into the game and we never like really updated it. And it's a relatively important part of the game. It's not core to the game, but many people ignore it because it kind of like needs a little bit of love, right? And so we're working on it right now. It's going to get fixed. So for anyone in the audience who plays the game, it's like, it's coming, we're making it better. But there are some people who are just like so fed up, and they happen to be devs, and like they built their own CLI on top of our contracts. And so they built, their own interface to the bounties because they were like so angry with ours, which by the way is the best possible outcome. When we saw that, I think the person who shared it did it like to spite us, like in a friendly way. But we were just like, yes, this is literally why we're doing what we're doing, to encourage behavior like this. We don't want to build bad UX, make people build their own, but we want to see people, bringing tooling to our chain. And, Wolfgame is an amazing example of this. The tooling around Wolfgame is spectacular. The amount of dev resources that have gone into building tools on top of the game is like really incredible. And so we're really hoping to encourage that and develop it. And we want to see more of that in our community. So it's not going to incentivize us to build bad UX, but when it does happen, where it's a pleasant surprise for us.
Yeah, having your community solve any challenges, let's say, in the game experience is a pretty great problem.
Yeah, we see that obviously in Wolfgame, but even in Battle Plan, like we're not fully released, and the players are anticipating features that we plan for and just like implementing them just because it's like, well, we need this. So it's building in public is a new way to make games, I think.
So, I mean, we covered a lot of them, but, maybe we talked about the player experience a bit in terms of, the implications and reasons to put things on chain. We even talked about game performance a bit. What about the security side of things? Open-ended.
In terms of, we already talked a little bit about kind of like cheating and opportunities there. That's a particular focus for Reboot. We use on-chain, completely publicly visible rating system for players. And the premise of the protocol is that through the token model, we disincentivize cheating. So it's kind of like a blockchain sort of thinking, is just sort of like you have a better EV from playing the game if you're playing honestly versus if you're playing, if you're trying to trick the system. And so, so far that is working out, right? Like people prefer to have their ratings converged because they get the maximum EV when, the system understands and can compute probabilities based on their play behavior, as close to the accurately as they can. Some interesting side effects of that, in terms of exploits and bots and stuff, is that the bots seeking highest EV are going to gravitate to a swim lane that's above most players, and so they'll never match make with most other players. So, we're not calling it like a cheat proofing system, but it is an interesting side effect that people, even bots or other people that are playing that are of high rank, they kind of sort themselves by their best possible EV, which, is it a security, solution? I'm not quite sure, but at least it is an interesting way of addressing like a big problem in gaming, and especially a big problem when you're exchanging value.
So, Sorby, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say on the security side, what I can share is at, Xai, we're working closely with the off-chain guys to design that whole infrastructure. And what's really exciting about the way everything is designed, we have this, data availability committee similar to Nova, highly trusted parties in the data availability committee. There's something that ends up happening when highly trusted parties are posting data or certificates, where this apathy starts to happen, where like no one is like, quote unquote, checking the chain anymore. So we created these Sentry nodes and worked closely with Ed and those guys on that. These Sentry nodes, what they do is create an economic incentive for people to just basically double check the work in a distributed system. So, the committee is posting certificates. It's almost like a quasi proof of work system, right? Where like you're running this lightweight node and you're checking the certificates and the attestations to make sure that they're honest. Because on a long enough time frame, if no one's checking, you don't know, right? It's one of those things where like if a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, did it actually happen?
Yeah.
And the second part of this is, let's say that the committee is dishonest, right? Let's say the committee is, I can't say who's on our committee because we haven't announced, but it's some big people and they're like, oh, you know what? F these guys. We're going to screw them over. What ends up happening on the Xai protocol is it actually enters into rollup mode. So when rollup mode happens, it takes it goes into like regular L2 mode, where transaction costs are now much like, well, not much, yeah, actually much. They're much higher. So it would be basically the delta between how expensive Nova is versus one, right? Which is, you're going from fractions of a penny to like a few cents. It's nothing exuberant like, ETH1. But when this rollup mode happens, there can be no loss of funds because simply, you submit a challenge, or you submit a proof to withdraw your funds back from, the Xai protocol back to, Arbitrum 1 or ETH L1. And we really like that design because I think, one, you have with a video game type of use case, I think most users are okay with that trust assumption of like, okay, this committee is highly trusted. I'm, playing games. When I'm posting on chain is different states, etc. They're not going to screw me over versus like if this was a DeFi focused thing, right? Where you don't want to have so much trust onto a central party. Secondly, I think this fallback mechanism of, well, let's say the committee, I think cryptographic and distributed systems should be designed from the ground up, from the idea of like, what is the worst case scenario? Can you survive the absolute worst case scenario? In our instance, the absolute worst case scenario is the committee is like, screw these guys. Well, even in that worst case scenario, there can be no loss of user funds because you would just exit the Xai protocol, similar to how you can exit, Arbitrum 1 by submitting that proof or whatever through a regular smart contract. So that's what we're doing for security. You've seen, Ronin is doing so well right now with pixels, all that stuff. Shout out to the Ronin guys. But, the Ronin hack happened and it killed a lot of their momentum. And thankfully, they've been able to chug along, but it would kill most teams. And we want to avoid a situation like that. And security is of the utmost importance to us.
It's kind of like AnyTrust Plus, what you described.
Oh, AnyTrust Plus, dude.
You like that?
That's good, dude. That's good.
All right, I better start seeing that on X. All right, so that kind of leads, I guess, good into the conversation around the technology. So I guess, like, what are some of the significant technical challenges you guys face with building an on-chain game? And then how has Arbitrum helped you to overcome that? Naturally, got to plug the product.
I can go first and pump my Arbitrum bags. So first of all, like the challenges of building a game are you have to build something that's entertaining. And that in of itself is hard enough. Like, how do you capture people's attention? So leaving that aside, that initial challenge that we all have to get over, building it on chain is like going on hardcore mode because the tooling doesn't really exist to do this. And so things that would be really easy if you were deploying to an AWS server, all of a sudden you have to invent new tools, or you have to work with vendors who are at varying levels of their startupness. And so generally startups doing business with other startups is not great business, because you're both working out things together, and there just aren't mature vendors out there who can provide reliable service. And so we have cycled through a number of different vendors. I'm not going to name names on either side because I believe in positivity here, but we've had to ultimately build a lot of our own infrastructure because we couldn't find reliable vendors to do the things that are core to our business. And that was probably the biggest surprise. Our company is, yes, we're a game studio building a pirate game, which people enjoy, but underneath the hood, we're also a technology company. Because in order to power the game experience that you have when you play Pirate Nation, there is 30 to 40 different game systems and systems that we've had to build and pieces of infrastructure that just simply don't exist. And that is not known when you jump into it, right? And what we're trying to do is we're trying to build things so other people don't have to go through this pain, so they can just build fun games. We win when more people are playing on-chain games, because it means that there's more visibility on the whole space in general. It legitimizes it. It isn't just a bunch of Ponzi-nomics. It's just people playing fun games and having a good time. That's ultimately why people get into the entertainment industry to begin with. And so we just want to make tools because they just don't exist. But that takes up a lot of our time. And we're constantly balancing internally our engineering and product resources between back-end infrastructure that is invisible to players, they just expect because they're playing a game, and things that are delightful to push the game forward. And oftentimes they go hand in hand. We have this positive flywheel where you have to build a new feature, but in order to enable that feature, you have to build the infrastructure. And so they work in tandem with each other, and you can't just have one without the other.
Yeah, you guys said you're a tech company, but you're also a pirate company,
We are very much a pirate company. Lots of pirate puns. An Arbitrum. Yeah, I have to. We actually are very, very grateful, and our partnership has worked out really well for us, and hopefully for you as well. But anytime we have a roadblock, we're like, hey, we need to talk to somebody here or there. You get the intro done for us immediately. It's super helpful because we don't have all the industry contacts, and we have found working with you guys to be, really smooth and really excellent. Like, you're a S-tier partner. For sure. When I talk about the partners at varying levels of maturity, you're definitely at the right end of the spectrum for us. And so we're really grateful to be working together.
I appreciate that.
I can add to that. What I would share is, first of all, building a fully on-chain game is really hard. One of the main reasons is because the file size limits on any blockchain tend to be very small. So just to give you an idea of what that means, you may have read the news if you're a gamer that the most recent Call of Duty game is going to be 200 gigabytes. That's one of the biggest games, if not the biggest game, I think, that has ever been made. Now, to be fair, the majority of those files are music files, graphic files. That's what takes up most of the space. But there's a lot of those files that contain that game's logic. I would estimate that most AAA games today probably have about 250 megabytes of disk space that they're taking up. When you go to make a fully on-chain game, you start to find that there are file size limits that are around 24K. So if you can imagine the difference between 250 megabytes and 24K, it is massive. To give you a better frame of reference, if you rewind time back to 1986, when the NES was released in the United States of America, those little cartridges that people would put games on had 40K. So
Damn.
If you're dealing with a blockchain that has 24K limits, you have even less space for game logic than a 1986 NES game. Now, our studio in particular is making very high production quality games. I won't go so far as to call them AAA, though they look like AAA games. So there's a lot going on under the hood. The easy answer is just make more files, make more of those 24K files. The problem that you run into when you do that is the gas costs start to increase. So there's this balancing act that takes place. Our journey as a studio throughout 21 and 22 is we worked with all the big blockchain projects in the space. We did test deployments with all the usual suspects. And for that reason, and also for other reasons, speed, cost, stability, we didn't find a match. We didn't find a chain that we felt was gonna do what we needed it to do to launch these very ambitious games that we have. So we started to get to know the folks at Off-Chain Labs. Sobi had a really good relationship with SizeChat and AJ, and of course got to know Steve and Ed. And that basically gave birth to Zai, the layer 3 project that basically solved every single problem that we had. So it's been amazing, both from a relationship perspective, but also from a technology perspective, to work with the Off-Chain Labs team and of course the Arbitrum Foundation, and have this amazing technology available that solves our contract limit problem, solves our speed problem, solves gas cost problem, that allows literally these games to exist, because with everything that we were working with other chains, it simply wasn't working out.
Awesome. I love that. It makes sense. Sobi, you're muted if you're adding something.
Yeah, I'll pump the art bags a little bit. I'm like probably the best at pumping the art bags on this panel. But I think something people like to throw out there when they talk about consumer applications or gaming and stuff, they're like, oh, a gamer never cares if like the game they're playing is hosted on Azure or Google Cloud. Well, that's because those things are perfect substitutes. I don't think we're at a point right now where blockchains are perfect substitutes. I do think block space will become a commodity, but blockchains themselves and the way that they're built and designed aren't. So what I mean by that is, Arbitrum and the Nitro stack, Orbit chains, etc., I think is the best EVM compliant kind of stack in the entire space, right? We've seen it with as far how far along Arbitrum is in the developer roadmap of like L2s. It's like about to be like a state 2 L2 or whatever it's called, or phase 2. It's the only layer 2 with fraud proofs, and with Bold going live soon, there's going to be permissionless validation and fraud proofs, which is like massive. I think having a roll up without fraud proofs is like driving a car without brakes, right? It should be kind of a non-starter most of the time. The other thing I can say is, with Stylus, I think whoever's going to get the DevRel job for Stylus is about to have the most fun in crypto, probably. Because, for people that don't know, what Stylus does is it enables developers to write contracts in C++ and Rust and literally take up, 100x or 1,000x less gas. That's really exciting because a lot of games are written in Rust and C++. So you can bring this very performant language and write these contracts even with less gas, right? And it's all EVM, equivalent. So when we look at all these different things, it goes, okay, like, at Zai, we can upgrade to Stylus if we want to, which we will. That makes things a lot more performant. Allows us to bring fees down even more. Allows us to use, different libraries that are, you can use things like Face ID to unlock your wallet that you couldn't like do before, or send transactions as an instance. And, for us, the other big thing is if you look at the sheer amount of like liquidity, if you will, on Arbitrum 1 is insane. There's more Ethereum on Arb than there is on like every other like roll up combined. And we haven't announced this yet, but we're doing some really interesting stuff with interoperability where people won't have to make any trade-offs on where like their games live and where they play and where they trade and transact. Kind of inspired by what the Pirate Nation guys have done. They've done some awesome stuff on that end well. But I think in general, just working with the Arbitrum team on both the foundation side and the original developers and off-chain has been absolutely amazing. They're actually, off-chain is the company that's developing, supporting, and maintaining Zai. So that means like the bridge contract, the RPC, stuff like that, which gives us a lot of confidence in the security of everything, et cetera. And I just think that gaming is going to live on Arbitrum because it gives users and players the shot at the best types of user experience, not only from transaction costs, speed, security, and liquidity. It's just the whole bundle. But then when you introduce things like Stylus, that's where things get like super cracked. So really looking forward to seeing more games deploy here, and happy to play a part in that, hopefully.
Yeah, and the Arbitrum Foundation is looking for a DevRel lead, so struggling to find that one. So All right, we're going to wrap up here, and I really appreciate everyone, joining us for this panel and the ones previously. And Anna will come up here and give some final words. But thanks a lot, guys. And if you guys want to learn, people watching, if you want to learn more about on-chain gaming, it's going to be in your face through the Arbitrum ecosystem more and more. So just keep up there. Thanks, guys.